Do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink or about your body. What do you think of when you hear those words? Or verses like them. The Bible's full of verses very similar to that. The Bible is full of little sections that tell us that God will take care of us, that God will provide. So what do you think of when you hear words like that? You might be surprised to hear that when I hear words like that, what I think is that it's all a bunch of baloney. And let me explain to you why I think that. In order to explain why I think that, I've got to go back a bit. I've got to go back about 14 years, as a matter of fact. We finally, after many years of back and forth, we finally made the decision as a family that we were going to go to seminary. And when we made the decision to go to seminary, we made the decision to leave what was for us a very comfortable existence. We both left behind six-figure jobs. We left behind a big, beautiful new house that had been built for us. We had left behind a backyard that we had finally finished landscaping that had a big swimming pool with a spa and a waterfall coming down the hill, feeding the swimming pool. We left the only church that we had ever known, the only church we had ever belonged to, the church where we had been baptized, Cheryl and I both, the church where we had been confirmed, the church where we went to Sunday school, the church that we were married in, the church that our children were baptized in. Our children were leaving behind the only friends that they had ever known, the only school that they had ever known, all their aunts and uncles. We left behind those same people, parents and friends and family members, brothers and sisters. And we left all that stuff behind because of verses just like this one. Do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, or about your body. And I have to say, when we got to seminary, I found my happy spot. When we got to seminary, I was like a fish in water. It was nice. I loved it there. And a lot of my friends that were at seminary, they struggled on and off. Am I really supposed to be here? Is this really what I'm supposed to be doing with my life? And I have to say, honestly, I didn't have those struggles. I knew that I was in the right spot. I knew that I was doing exactly what I was supposed to do. And I would walk from the apartment that we lived on campus. You would walk, they were completely on one end of the campus, and all the classrooms and whatnot were on the other end of campus, and I'd walk out of my apartment and across the softball fields, and every day I would look around at these beautiful old buildings, and I would just thank God that I had the opportunity to be at Concordia Seminary. I thank God that I was going to have the opportunity to be a pastor in His church. I thank God that He loved me so much that I got to be there. And I never had a second of doubt. And then things changed a little bit. I left that very comfortable little spot, that pleasant and nurturing little spot that we lived in, and we went from St. Louis back pretty close to home, back to Sacramento, California for vicarage, into the place that ended up being our first call, place that we lived for 5.5 years. Now, I'm telling you all that stuff about how comfortable I was and how happy I was and how sure I was, so I can tell you this one story. Now, in Sacramento, we lived in this little house, an older house. Around here, maybe not considered an older house. I don't know, it was maybe 50 years old. Around here, that seems like a new place, but we lived in this old house, and this house had been a rental for a long time. And by that, I'm trying to tell you that it wasn't in really good repair. It had been pretty beat up. And after we lived there for a little while, the water line, the main water line coming out of the street feeding the house broke. And they had to replace it. So they had to dig a big trench 3 or 4 feet deep in the front yard and out to the street so they could repair the water line. And in the meantime, we got our water through a little garden hose out of our neighbor's front yard. It's the craziest thing I ever saw. I didn't know you could do that, but apparently they'd figured out how to do it. As you can imagine, we didn't have a great deal of water pressure. And it was not a very fun time, and people in the Burringrud household weren't exactly thrilled with our water situation at that time. Now, after a few weeks, the water situation got straightened out. We lived through the great unpleasantness with the water, and everything was going well again. The hole had been buried. We weren't worried about the kids falling in the hole. The water pressure was great. It was better than it had ever been because the line had been fixed out to the street. It was a Saturday morning, and I'll never forget it. I was sitting at a little table that we had sitting just outside the kitchen, and Cheryl had just gotten home from the grocery store, and she was putting her groceries away in the kitchen, and Danny boy was 8 years old at the time, and he had figured out that Mom had come home from the grocery store, so he knew that there was some stuff that he had to get taken care of. And so he went into the kitchen and he asked if Mom would make him his favorite snack of all time, a bologna and butter sandwich. He didn't get that from me or from his mother, as far as I don't know where it came from, but the boy loved him some bologna and butter sandwiches. Now, as I sat at that table, preparing my sermon, making some adjustments, there was something that was coming that was going to shake my world. The fact that I was so comfortable knowing exactly where I was and what I was doing, that it was the right thing and I was doing what I was cut out for and called to do, that all came unraveled when Danny asked Cheryl for a bologna and butter sandwich, and Cheryl said these words that I will never forget as long as I live. "I'm sorry, sweetheart, we didn't have bologna money today." And I was horrified. Everything I had built up, everything I had convinced myself of in the prior 5 or 6 years crumbled to the ground in a matter of seconds. And I just heard those words echoing around in my head. We don't have bologna money. We don't have bologna money. We don't have bologna money. When we gave up everything that we left behind when we left California the first time, I was okay with certain things. I was okay with the fact that we weren't going to have, say, BMW money. I was okay with the fact that we weren't going to have Rolex money. I was even pretty okay with the fact that we probably weren't going to have season ticket money. But the fact that we didn't have bologna money was a blow that my ego just couldn't take. So Cheryl whipped Danny something else up, something that I'm sure he was just as happy with as a bologna and butter sandwich. And I stopped what I was doing, and I went into the kitchen, and I said to Cheryl, "We don't have bologna money?" And she said, "Oh, I didn't really mean it like that. I mean, we're fine. It just, we're just working with, we're paycheck to paycheck, so we're working with what we have." And I said, "Everything that I have done has been a mistake. We never should have went back to St. Louis. We never should have went to seminary. This has all been one terrible mistake, and it's all my fault. I have ruined our family's life, and I'm going to quit immediately. And I'm going to go back, and I'm going to find a job, the kind of job where we can have baloney money. And Cheryl's trying to calm me down, tell me that it's not that big of a deal, that everything is okay, and don't be so rash about everything. And I am just whining to beat the band. And the doorbell rings. I think about 30 seconds went by. And I went and I answered the doorbell, and wouldn't you know it, it's the property manager. Now, the property manager was kind of a pain in the neck, and we didn't get along all that well. And so this is just what I needed to see. What's next? What's next? Is he going to tell me he's going to like raise the rent by, 10 packs of bologna a month or something? But no, he said that the landlord, who lived out of town, had appreciated the fact that while our water was all not working and we were getting our water through a garden hose, he appreciated the fact that we hadn't really complained or been easy to work with through the whole deal. So he handed me a card, a little Hallmark card. I said, okay, great, thank you very much. I closed the door, went back, and I said, well, the landlord sent us a little card. I don't know, open it up. It probably says, sorry you can't buy bologna, but at least you got water, right? Well, Cheryl opened the card and she looked at it. I didn't really see the card. I can't tell you anything about that card that he sent, but I noticed inside the card was a little gift card. And I thought, oh, this is sweet. Let it be a gift card for Chevy's. Now, Chevy's was our favorite Mexican restaurant. And I was like, as bad as I feel right now, there is nothing that will make me feel better than some nachos and a big margarita. That's what I really need. I need to drown my sorrows. But it wasn't a gift card for Chevy's. It was a gift card for the Nugget supermarket, our local supermarket. A $50 gift card. And at the time, I had no idea how much a pack of Oscar Mayer bologna costs. I knew that my bologna had a first name, but that's a whole different story. I had no idea how much a pack of bologna costs. I did a little research before today. I'd figured out that a pound of Oscar Mayer bologna costs about $5. I had no idea how much bologna costs, but I knew that $50 was a lot of bologna. Found out now, 10 pounds worth of bologna. What I'm trying to say by telling you this whole convoluted story is that God allowed me to wallow in my own self-pity for 30 seconds. For 30 seconds before he intervened and he let me know in no uncertain terms that it was his job and he was going to be the one that took care of me and my family. That he had us. That he heard us. It was as if he came in to say, Dan, I know it's only been 30 seconds, but I can't stand to listen to you anymore. I'm tired of hearing it. If bologna is so all-fired important to you, here's a card for 10 pounds worth of bologna, but for my sake, would you just get back to work? I think that's what God says when he's saying for God's sake. He says for my sake. For my sake, would you just get back to work and quit whining about the bologna? And I was amazed, and I was appreciative, and I was more than a little bit ashamed. And I knew that God was in control, that he knew us, that he knew exactly what was going on in our lives, and that he was going to take care of us. And that he knew better than I did what we needed. Because I would have been happy, and Danny Boy would have been happy with a pound of bologna. And God sent us 10 pounds. And my attitude changed right then and there, and it changed forever. And I want you to know that God hears you too. That God is in control of your lives as well. And that he loves you, and if you simply ask, he will help you. Not necessarily in the way that you want to be helped, but in a way that's better than what you could ever dream of. And he does that because he loves you like nobody in your life has ever loved you before. And he has work for you to do. And he doesn't want you, while you're trying to do the work that he set out for you, he doesn't want you to be worried about things like your daily bread or your daily lunch meat. He wants you to be worried about the work that he's put in front of you to do. So when you hear one of these verses, one of these God will provide, don't worry kinds of verses, when someone tells you that God will take care of you and God will provide for you, I hope that you'll be able to think back to today, that you'll be able to think back to my story and say to yourself, or maybe even shout out loud, I think that's a bunch of baloney. Amen.